see who's what are you looking to get out of today? When you think of wealth building, what's important to you about building wealth and why are you here?
I always hear people talk about house hacking, you know, like you do this and then you take the money, you do this one, but okay, how do you actually explain that to somebody? Yeah.
For a potential client? Yeah.
Where, you know, it just makes sense and it seems.
Okay. House hacking. Who else?
Maybe to just have a different mindset about money.
Okay.
Can you repeat? I'm sorry.
Yes. The question was, what's important to you about wealth building, or what would you like to get out of today? Yeah, how to keep it. That's a good one. Two more.
Can one of them be like on investment properties?
House hack, I'm gonna say
Okay,
investing.
got it.
I've got 11 steps for you today that cover most of this, but I just want to see which ones we should dig deep on. One more.
How about is it ever time to just like let go? Like when is it not the right property?
Oh, with investing. I can definitely
Or do you
talk
have
about that.
What's that?
I can talk about that.
Oh, nice.
Cue Elsa.
I
Okay.
know, right? I love it.
All right. Awesome. Well, there's a couple faces in the room that I don't know. If I haven't met you, my name's Bethany. I am an agent out of this office. I lead the Bethany Nelson group. I've been with Keller Williams. I say I've grown up in Keller Williams because I got licensed. Well, I partnered with KW when I was 21. Got licensed at 22. Looked like I was 16 in 2011, which was really great time to get into real estate. Was not. My first year in real estate, I made $8,000, and I was not an instant success story by any means. It's been a long road. This year, our team will do about 1.3 and some change $1 million in revenue, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. So this is an important topic to me because I've worn a lot of hats in my time in real estate. I've been an individual agent. I actually ran a Keller Williams franchise for 2.5 years where I would sit down with a lot of agents and talk about their journeys and their wealth building. And then I got back into production in 2019, experienced obviously the pandemic and the highs and lows of that in real estate. And really our team started to grow in 2021. So it's been a short but fast growth phase for us. In that time, I have learned everything not to do concerning wealth building because I did it the wrong way. I have failed in every way possible, including not filing or paying your taxes for 4 years and what that looks like to have a very large IRS like debt, and have turned that around to go from a negative net worth in 2019 to have a net worth just under $1 million this year. So I was hoping to crush $1 million this year, and I won't get there, but next year is the year. So I own investment properties. I have investments in other areas, and excited to talk about this. So I would love for this to be more of a conversation than for me just talking at you. So I'm probably going to ask you guys some questions because it's never fun to just like talk at people. And truth, like be told, I'm here for you. And if I don't know the answer to something, I'm going to tell you I don't know the answer to it. I'm not just going to like pull stuff out of the air. So I hope we have some fun together. So the nitty gritty, oh no, it's not on what I see is not what you see. Hold on, here we go. Okay, delayed. I am not a licensed CPA. I am not a loan officer. I joke that I just know enough to be dangerous. So please do not take anything that I am saying as legal advice, tax advice, financial advisor advice. Seek all those people out. This is just what I have learned from those people in my life. So step one in wealth building is truly finding your why. And I feel like this phrase gets overused too much. What I'm going to encourage you to look at when it comes to finding your why is what's your why financially? And this will shift over time. So for me, when I really started my wealth building journey, my why was get out of tax debt. My why was not feel like I owed everyone money, and I was actually on my own journey to build wealth. And to be someone that was in negative net worth, it felt like a really big hole to dig myself out of, a huge financial rut. So I had to create small whys. It was like, okay, step number one was I walked into a bookkeeper's office with this great cardboard box that had 4 years of invoices, receipts. Have you ever seen receipts after like a year? Like they don't look very good. Like you can't really.
They disintegrate. I don't know what it
do.
is.
God bless this bookkeeper. Her name is Linda. I walked into Linda's office with this gray box, ugly crying, saying I need to clean my shit up. And I had 4 years to do bookkeeping, and then sat down with an accountant and actually filed all 4 years at one time. And so that was my first step. Then my second step was get on a payment plan. Then my third step, right? So your why is going to shift over time. And the other piece that I would look at when you're looking for your why financially, and Chris brought this up, is your money mindset is a huge part of your journey. And if I haven't had the chance to like meet you and talk to you, I had a really unique childhood. And so I was a missionary kid. And at the age of 10, my parents moved us to the former Soviet Union, to a country called Kazakhstan, which yes, now there's a movie about it. I have not seen said movie. Moved us there, and I was the rich white American kid in a country where kids had two outfits. They had their school uniform and they had their outfit. Like that's how the culture was. I learned how to eat very, very simply because it was a poor country. It was a desert. So I went from third world kid to, I joke that my parents didn't think I was confused enough. So when we were deported, which that's a whole nother story for another day, we were deported, and we moved back here when I was just about to turn 13, which is a great time in anyone's life. And my parents put me in private school in Edina. So I literally went from like one extreme to the next extreme. And I got picked on because I didn't know what Abercrombie and Fitch was. Like my relationship, my base foundation of money is like really messed up because I was either embarrassed because I had too much, or I was embarrassed because I had too little. So like I just had a really, and actually to this day, if you ask me what my relationship with money is like today, my staff know that I have a secret savings account that I cannot access unless I physically go into the bank or I call them and have to give them all these passwords. Like I don't have the account number that I can transfer funds, because if I have money just sitting in my account, I'm not comfortable with it and I get rid of it. Not always in bad ways. Like a lot of it's donating and helping other people, but I'm not comfortable with a large sum of money sitting in my bank account. I often say that I could stretch $1,000 for a very long time, and $10,000, that commission check hits my bank account, she gone. So you have to learn that about yourself too. And so as far as like a money mindset, like Chris asked about earlier, I'd really encourage you to like go on that journey of what's your money mindset like? What's your relationship with money? Where does that come from? It does usually come from our childhoods. God bless our parents. They did their best. But what does that look like for you? And what are the areas that you need to grow in? So one thing that I think is also really helpful is to define what is your definition of wealth. And I stole this from my business partner, Ben Kinney, who says wealth is the ability to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. And I think this is a really great definition, especially for those of us that got into real estate. Kimi, what are the top 2 reasons people get into real estate?
Freedom.
Freedom, right?
Yeah.
Or money.
Freedom and money. Which
And
they actually
so-
don't go hand in hand
They
when you
don't.
first get into real estate.
Oh.
So.
And so I think that this is actually the definition of what most realtors are looking for when they get into real estate, is I want the ability to do what I want, when I want, that freedom of time with who I want. And so to be able to do that, we need to be able to finance it and fund it. So why is wealth important? This is kind of my why for you and what I would encourage you to think about, and kind of the foundation of everything we're going to go over today. Step 1 is going to be emergencies. you ever been in a position where something shows up you weren't expecting and whoop, guess that's going on the credit card? Just me? Like crap happens, life happens, right? I already owe KW Cares money because I already cussed today, so we're gonna try to limit that. Then there's opportunities. Okay, I said I got into real estate in 2011. Do you think I saw a lot of great opportunities of purchasing real estate at a very low price point? The answer is yes. If I would have been on this journey way earlier in my life, I think I would have it made right now. Like I would not be here, right? Because it's like I could have had a huge portfolio with the amount of properties that I actually helped other investors buy that I just wasn't in a position to buy myself. And then the last one is legacy. And for some of us, this is going to look really different. I don't have kids. I have 2 dogs, 2 fur babies, but they are just as expensive as children if you have a husky that likes to eat everything. And so legacy doesn't just have to be like your own children. I also think it's your parents. Who in here has done Bold or knows what Bold is? A lot of you. Awesome. When I started Bold, would have been 2014 probably. I had not broken 100,000 in income yet. And I got into Bold that year and I said, I want to make $100,000 this year because I want to send my parents on their dream anniversary trip to the Middle East. They wanted to follow the path of Jesus. And so I was like, I'm going to make this money so I can send them on this trip. I made the money. I had a reason, I had a motivation, and it was the coolest Christmas gift I've ever given ever in my life. But your legacy isn't just like people after you, it's the people before you too. And so if you're struggling with what could that legacy be, it doesn't just have to be defined by if you have children or a spouse or any of those people in your life. So step 2 is what we call a reality check. This is where I find most people get stuck and quit. So what I'm going to have you do is if you're going to take this seriously, go into every single bank account that you have, every credit card you have, and print off the last 2 months' statements. And then you're going to go to Target and you're going to buy yourself a little pack of highlighters. They usually come with these 3 colors, green, yellow, pink. And you're going to go through first and you're going to highlight all the things that are necessary. So let's talk through those. What are your necessary expenses?
Bill.
Rent, what did you say, Heather?
Bill, electric, gas.
Yes, electric, gas, your utilities, rent or a mortgage. What else? Groceries.
Yes.
I'm going to encourage you. So groceries necessary, but we're going to come back to that one.
Daycare.
Daycare. Okay, very valid. Insurance. Yes. Don't talk too much about daycare. She's already stressed out.
Transportation?
Like your vehicle?
Yeah.
Yep. Your car payment? Okay. So that's green. Like you can't eliminate those expenses. They're fixed. You have to spend them. Yellow is going to be the stuff that you definitely need, but maybe you could get it cheaper or be a little bit more intentional. Groceries is a great example. I don't know about you, but sometimes I go grocery shopping when I'm hungry and I buy a bunch of groceries and then later that week, I don't want to cook said groceries. I would rather just go out for dinner. And then the next week, I am throwing away said groceries because I did not use them. Anyone relate?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Every day.
Perfect example is you need the groceries, but maybe you don't meal prep or make a plan on what days are your, I'm for sure eating at home these nights so I can eat out these nights. What would be other things that could be yellow?
Dining out.
Dining out, great one. Just having a better plan. I'm not saying don't do it. It's just, are you planning when you are going to versus being reactive?
Little random things that drop in your cart at Target.
Amazon.
The Amazon buy now button is the worst thing that's happened to anyone's budget. Mhm.
TV subscription.
Yeah, huge.
Oh, yeah.
Subscription.
Here's one that I always find really funny. Anyone have a gym membership that they do not use? Good for you. Yeah. That's a very common one is I'm like, okay, how long have you had the Peloton subscription? Okay, when's the last time you got on the Peloton? Or is it actually more where you store your clothing, right? Okay. Then
Or-
last is.
Or
go-
dropping the lifetime and going to anytime.
There you go, switching, pivoting, absolutely, finding a cheaper option. Okay, then the last one is gonna be your
Actually
kinks.
not.
These are your cancel todays.
What was your?
So with a lot of them, you actually just more so need to add them up. So here's vulnerable moment. Whenever I do this exercise, and what's funny is I'm about to have one delivered to me, but I add up my Starbucks. And when you add up $7.50 for my almond milk latte every day, and you multiply that by 30 days, well, and then half the time I'm bringing a coffee to someone else too, it's like that's over $300 a month that I'm spending on coffee when you add it all up. That's a lot of money. So I go on stints of like canceling myself from Starbucks, right? Or maybe with the TV subscriptions, maybe you say, okay, we're gonna have one. Which one are we gonna have? We're gonna commit to Netflix, but we're getting rid of Hulu and whatever else there is, right? So pink is gonna be your cancel today. The other cancel today that I see a lot is people realizing they're paying for a subscription and they don't actually know what it is. So like Apple Care on a device that they actually no longer own, or trying to think of other ones that I've seen recently. But you're gonna go through and you're gonna highlight these activities. A lot of times you're actually gonna have to add things up. So you're gonna have yellow is probably gonna be your most highlighted color, and then figure out what your spending limit is gonna be for fun things like that. Like I said before, it's just me and my dogs, but I have a lot of married friends. And one of the things that I have realized that works really well for them is they have a joint account, but they each get an allowance for like, you can do whatever the heck you want with this money. You want to golf a lot in the summer, or you want to do whatever. And by giving each other allowances, there's not like the tension in their relationship around spending. Do the same for yourself. What's my allowance going to be this month for me to do my money like however I want and spend it? Any thoughts or questions on the reality check? Is that clear on how that works? Yeah.
Who should you have for a promotion?
Bottle of wine. So I'm just kidding.
Like that's actually a yellow as optional, so you might wanna have the cheaper wine in
Yeah.
case it's like a
Trader
whole
Joe's.
bottle.
I've got a great bottle from Trader Joe's, but I think it's like.
Trader Joe's is delicious
Yeah.
wine. I mean,
Here's the thing. I know we're like laughing about it, but the reality is that's why I meant like most people get stuck here. Or a lot of people choose not to do this part of it. And here's the thing, when we get to the next steps, you're gonna realize if you skip this step, you kind of screw yourself over, because later I'm gonna ask you what additional money you just found in your budget, and you won't know. You'll just guess and you'll just play around. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, you have it said as reality check. I think a lot of people don't do it because they don't want to see the number. Yet the number's not gonna go up if you don't face it, right? And so it's like, I don't want to look at my bank account because I don't want to see what the like balance is. You look at it or not, that's not changing, and most likely it's gonna go down. So you can either control it or not.
It's like when I don't want to get on the scale because I know that I didn't follow my meal plan last week, right? It's like whenever there's no accountability, a lack of accounting creates a lack of accountability, is a quote I've heard. If you can't count it, you can't hold it accountable. Because then you're just holding it accountable based on a feeling. There's not actually a metric that you're following. So this way you're looking at metric. Okay, then you're gonna create an economic business plan. Does everyone in here know, like, does everyone in here have a business plan for next year? Chris does. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys, a spreadsheet that I go through. So I'm gonna figure out. I forgot about it. And I'm happy to share this spreadsheet with anyone who would like to use it. So what you do is my nifty little spreadsheet here is gonna go based on my metrics. So first you put in your net income goal. Now your net income goal is before taxes. You still have to like prepare for that mentally and emotionally. And it's gonna calculate based on my average sales price, based on my average commission. This year, I'm gonna close 31 units. Then I've got my like KW splits and everything in here. So just so we're clear, it is accounting for your KW splits. I know next year I need to close 40 units to hit that income goal. Why are you laughing? Okay. Everyone know this number for themselves for 2025. Cool. I would make sure you know this because then, and here's the other piece, is you need to plan your budget though around the numbers that you did this year. So what happens a lot in real estate is people will say, well, I have a goal of making $250,000 next year. If you haven't done it before, don't plan, like, we always budget based on what we already have a history of doing. And then as we move forward and we make more money, then we can allocate the funds differently. Does that make sense? So I'm going to show you guys some different ways to like look at this, but I would make sure that you know, hey, this is my unit goal. And then our system actually breaks it down to, based on my conversion rates, I know that I need to go on 4 appointments a month for me to close that business. So then when I'm doing my dials, I'm just basing it off of how many units and how many dials do I need to get to how many appointments do I need to get. Right. Back over here. Okay. Then you're going to start tracking your net worth. So net worth, how you calculate that is going to be all of your assets minus your liabilities is going to equal your net worth. So let's talk through that. What are your assets? House. Okay. Now, when you're putting your assets in, you are going to do the value of it today. So example, if you bought your house 10 years ago for $300,000, but today you could sell it for $400,000, you're going to put today's value in, okay? So you're going to put in your house. What else? Car. What else? Tell me more. What kind of investment? 401k, stocks, bonds, any of those. Pretty basic one we're missing.
Bank account.
Your bank accounts. What's in your bank accounts? What's your cash? Okay. So these are most common assets. What are our liabilities? Mortgage. What else?
Student loan.
Yep, student loan debt.
Credit card debt.
Car payment. Credit cards. Sidebar. Of the mortgages that were closed in 2024, what percentage of them were first mortgages? Take a stab. Okay. No. 60? No. 40%. Okay, so 40% of the loans closed in 2025 were first mortgages. What does that mean about the other 60? Those are home equity lines of credit and those are refinances. Let's think about that for a second. What are today's interest rates?
I think they just touched 7, yeah.
They're around 7.
Yeah.
Okay. Why in the world would most of these people that have 3.5% or 4%, 4.5% interest rate do a refi?
Credit card debt.
They're pulling equity out of an asset that has appreciated. Super sad.
What percentage was that?
60%.
60%?
It'll be interesting to see like where the numbers land, like to the decimal point at the end of the year. But yeah, those are.
Where did you get
know
that
that.
info, Beth?
That is from. We're partnered with a company called Place, and we get that data from Goldman Sachs.
Gotcha.
When they shared that with us, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. That's insane.
Wow.
So what that means is that a lot of people are feeling the weight of this, of their asset or their debts. their liabilities. Now, to be super clear, I have no judgment. Like, if anyone in the room has done that, I had to pull out a home equity line of credit to finish the hoarder house I flipped that went very awry for me, so I could get it off my books. Like, well, you gotta do what you gotta do for your family. But this is some of the important part. When we meet with our clients, one thing that we talk about on our real estate team frequently is how much are these assets that we're helping people purchase? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, correct? Okay. So if you met with a financial advisor and you gave them $400,000 to help you invest, would you expect to hear from them? If you didn't hear from them, what would you do?
Probably call.
I would hope that you would like find someone else, right? Like, if you're not interested in my asset and my investment, then I'm gonna take my business somewhere else. I don't understand why we don't treat people that way in real estate. Because most people don't give their financial advisor $400,000 or $500,000 because they don't have that. But for some reason, we've gotten really comfortable as an industry being okay with just being known for opening doors for people and talking about the color of their carpet, right? Like, what would it look like if every year, at a minimum, your clients expected a phone call from you that said, hey, Wendy, just wanted to check in. How are you doing? I'd love to talk to you about your asset in real estate. Do you have any goals for 2025? Oh, Bethany, I would never move. We love our interest rate. I'm gonna stay here forever. Awesome. Do you have any financial goals that maybe if you pulled out a home equity line of credit and paid down some debt, or you've got a kid going to college next year, have you thought about buying an investment property that could reduce the amount of student loan debt that they have when they graduate? These are conversations where we can help them use their biggest asset to actually help propel it forward, because the reality is a lot of people are already doing it. They're just not doing it with counsel, right? They're going on, you guys ever go on your mortgage statement? Like, Mr. Cooper is always trying to get me to refinance when I log in. And I'm like, sir, I'm not going to refinance. But they're like, here's how much equity you have in your home. Like, the banks have figured out that this is what people need right now. So these are super important conversations that we should be having with our clients. Okay. So when you take your assets minus your liabilities, you're going to get left with your net worth. So what happens is as your assets appreciate, now your car, not going to appreciate, okay? Sorry to break it to you. But your house, your financial investments, those should be appreciating. Who knows how much do our real estate assets appreciate on average per year? 4%. I love that. Okay. So it's super easy to plug into a compound interest calculator, which we're going to talk about in a minute, someone's asset and what roughly it should be worth. I always double check my CMAs against that number before I go on the appointment. It is definitely not what I use for the appointment, but it's kind of my like fact checker. Are we on track or is it dramatically off? I put up here, it's kind of hard to read, but under track your net worth, it says sometimes we're losing so slowly we think we're winning. What do you think that means?
When you have like your cash in a very low interest, 0.01, and if you're doing property, it's not doing anything. If you're just watching that money sit there, you think, oh, I'm saving.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it, just with your cash. I would also say, so when you track your net worth, you had asked earlier, like, who do we like see for emotional support as I'm doing my reality check? I have made my net worth like something I look forward to every month. It's a game for me. I've gamified it, and I literally take myself on a date. And I stole this from our regional director, Olivia Manson. She and her husband, Colin, the first Friday of every month, and they've been doing this for a really long time. They do Financial Freedom Fridays. And it's the first Friday of every month. They sit down and they go through their financial net worth together. They open a bottle of wine or go out to dinner. They have their net worth tracker. They talk through their goals, and it's kind of like their check-in time on how are we progressing as a family towards our goals. And I just loved that idea. And I'm like, okay, well, and I could do that with myself. So now the first Friday of every month, it's not always perfect. Sometimes I have to move it. I check in with myself and I check all my account balances from the previous end of the month. And then what I'm able to look at is when you can compare month over month. Did my net worth go up from last month or did it go down? If you're not checking in with it on a regular basis, you will not know. And you could be losing so slowly, meaning your net worth could be going down so slowly that you think you're winning because you're like, oh, but my investment account went up. But you don't realize that your entire net worth actually went down because your investments might have gone up, but maybe your spending went up too. And so your credit card debt is higher. Does that make sense? You have to check in with all of it as a whole. Any questions on this? Cool. All right. This I added, there's 11 steps because I added a step for realtors specifically. This is my steps for, because later we're going to talk about taxes. And for you to really take advantage of all the tax benefits that you have in real estate, you need to operate your business like a business. So step one is going to be opening an LLC. With our team members, we actually, when they onboard with us, we give them the instructions and directions on how to set up their first LLC. And then you're going to open a separate business banking account. Why would you open a separate business banking account? Oh, it's separate, okay. It's easier to account for. And then when you're doing your taxes and you're like, what were my business expenses? I think a lot of realtors actually don't get all of the deductions that they could because they haven't tracked their business expenses well. So for me, and this is just me, I actually have chosen not to have business debt. I don't even own a business credit card. I use a debit card, and I have a debit card. I should have my wallet up here. I could show you. I have a debit card for every property and every different business that I'm a part of. And the debit card is what I use for any of those expenses. So if I go to Home Depot and I need something for one of my rentals and something for another rental and maybe a lockbox for the team, I literally am like, hi, I have 3 different transactions because I want 3 different receipts and I want the expenses to come out of the different accounts because it makes bookkeeping and all of that tracking at the end of the year way easier. We're going to talk more about profit first model in a minute. The fourth one, I think a lot of realtors think that they can't afford a bookkeeper. It is not that expensive and they pay for themselves if you find a good one. So if you are doing this full time and you're starting to make commission, that is literally, that would be my first hire. Not transaction coordination help, although I think that's important. A bookkeeper would be number 1. And then when you have built up your checking account where you have a balance in there that's pretty consistent, put yourself on payroll. In the state of Minnesota, we have a self-employment tax. And by putting yourself on payroll, you can save significantly in your self-employment tax. Any questions on this?
One quick one.
Yeah.
When you're talking about separate accounts for all your different businesses, those all separate actual entities, or are those just like, I have this one for my rental property, I have this, are those under the same LLC? What do you do with that?
Great question. So I have 2 LLCs for our business, which that's a different conversation, but we have 2 LLCs for that. And then for my rental properties, I have 1 LLC, but then I do have different checking and savings accounts. And those are then labeled based on the property address.
Okay, cool.
So technically with my bank, my credit union, when I call, they're like, oh, hi, Ms. Nelson, because I have so many different checking and savings accounts with them. They're like, what account number is that under? Because I have the different LLCs, and then within there's so many separate accounts. But it's how I mentally, and it's an easy way for me to track my net worth when I literally run it that way. So I'm looking for efficiency in almost everything I do.
So how many accounts do you have then?
I literally have, I don't know, I'd have to sit down and add them up.
Okay,
I would,
like more than 20 or?
Yeah, I mean, our,
Jeff knows.
Jess probably does know more, because Jess handles all of our business accounts. But yeah,
That's awesome.
my bookkeeper doesn't think it's awesome. She's constantly like, can we reduce these? I'm like, no. So if you don't wanna do it, we'll find a new one. Okay. So profit first model, this slide's kind of hard to see, so I'm gonna draw it out for you. This is a book. So I did not come up with this, but the metrics I did come up with. So this is the model I used to get myself out of my financial rut. So here's how it looked. I'm gonna explain it how it looked then, because how it looks now is a lot more complicated. How it looked then is I would sell a house and the commission check, let's just say, for easy math, was $10,000. And that $10,000 would go into a checking account labeled income. Now, the goal of this checking account labeled income is that that actually gets to zero before the end of every month. I'll explain why. Then what you do is you are going to select what percentage of your income you want to have as profit. Now, for those of you that are experienced in the room, or maybe you haven't had your first sale yet, try to picture this with me. You sit down with your accountant in, February, March, to file the taxes for the year before. And they say, congratulations, you made $100,000 in profit. And you're like, where is that money? It happens all the time. You're like, okay, the IRS thinks I am this profitable and I made this much money, but I actually have nothing in my bank account. That's the problem this book solves, and what has actually made the biggest difference in my trajectory for my wealth. So what you do is you say, for this case, when I started, because I was hammering debt at this point. Hammering debt to the extent that I had the IRS app on my phone, and I was like selling stuff like crazy. Like, I don't need this, I'm gonna sell it. And if I made $20, I would transfer $20 to the IRS as soon as I got the cash from someone. Like, I was that committed to just pay it as fast as I can. I would take 1% profit. So 1% of $10,000 is what? This is real interesting when realtors can't tell percentages.
$10,
Not $10.
$100. One and some zeros.
Okay. All right. So here's the thing. $100 does not seem like a lot of money. Would you agree? It's just like, okay, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a lot of money. I'd want to give me $100, great. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not a ton of money. But if you hide that from yourself and put it in a savings account, personally, I put it in a money market account. And you say, I am not going to touch that money, that's profit. Then you go into the next person that's going to want their money is the IRS. So then you have an account called taxes. These are all different checking accounts. So when I say like, I have a lot of accounts, Chris, these are different checking accounts you're going to set up. I'm going to do this icon for the checking account. Okay? Then you are going to factor in what it costs for you to be a real estate agent. Now, when I was digging myself out of this rut, I still had an assistant and I still had other expenses for my business. So for me, that number was 30%. And then lastly, you have an account called owner compensation. So what you're doing is you're basically putting yourself on a 50-50 split. 50% of it is going to you. The other 50% is going to running your business into the IRS. Doing this, I always threw the profit at my debt. whatever financial metric I was looking to move as quickly as possible, that's what I threw the profit at. Owner's compensation, this is what I gave myself to live off of. So I knew that I had to make X amount of sales so that 50% of that GCI, that gross commission income, is what I could live off of. And that's how I dug myself out. I had to like re-engineer and work it backwards and give myself this kind of budget. Any questions on the profit first model?
Is that what you still do to this day?
Now the profit percentage is a lot higher. Now what I do is and we'll talk about this more later, but any passive income I generate, I do not live off of. My business coach taught me, Bethany, if you can lock in your lifestyle for 5 years, your world will dramatically change. And 2019, my net worth was negative. I mean, probably negative $50,000. I have the exact number somewhere. And now it's hovering right under 900,000 in the positive. So it's like, to make a swing that big, you kind of have to make dramatic life decisions. And for me, any profit the business makes, any profit my rentals make, I don't touch it. Just goes towards accounting. So
Not going to the income.
then I just kept paying the IRS, but now it just goes into my secret savings account, which that is what bankrolled a renovation I had to do on a rental property this year. I didn't acquire any debt doing an $89,000 renovation on a rental property. So that money goes back into reinvesting any of my assets. Okay. When you are, we're going back to kind of creating your economic business plan. So these are the different ways that you can acquire income. So normal income is what we do every day. That's us selling real estate. Investment income is actually not what you would think it is. It's not cash flow from a rental property. That's going to be like distributions from businesses or from like investments that you've made where you could earn distributions. And then passive income is going to be your passive income through real estate investments. What's really important is that as you grow, and we'll get into this further, is that you diversify into all three. Now, I'm going to put her on the spot for a second, but if you don't know Jess is our director of operations, and Jess knows, because she and I have very transparent conversations, that there will get to a point where she has hit the max income level of being a director of operations. It would be silly for any business owner to pay their director of operations $500,000 a year. But if she wants to make $500,000 a year, I know how to help her do that through investment income and passive income. So example, when people join our team or they join Keller Williams, I don't usually put them under me in profit share. I put them under other team members. When they partner with our team, because we're partnered with a company called Place, we also get revenue share. I do the same thing. So she's now taken over all my screening calls for new recruits. And that's her way of earning additional passive income. She and her husband want a house hack out of their first house into their next house. She also earns referral income for any deals that she brings to the team. So when we look at it that way, her income potential is unlimited. But for most people, because I teach this to non-realtors as well, most people, your normal income is going to get capped somewhere. Does that make sense? Cool. Any questions on this thought process? Hi, Tommy. All right, compound interest. I'm going to have everybody get out your phone and go to your app store. If you are not an Apple user, I cannot help you. Just kidding. I'm sure there's an app like this on a non-Apple too. But I want you to find an app called Compounder. Okay, everybody got the app? Okay. We're gonna do a fun little exercise.
There's multiple, what is it look like?
It's like teal.
There's no other name, just.
literally compounder. Okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna plug in
Did you hear that?
a starting balance of $360,000. Annual rate of return, 4%,
What was the starting number?
360,000. Periodic additions, 0. And duration, one person, who wants to be my volunteer? Wendy, will you put in 30 years? Who else has it up? Tommy, will you put in 6 years? Great. Okay, Tommy, what's your number?
Investment value is 457,407 and
Great. So this is the sales price of the first duplex I bought. Bought it in 2018, $360,000. The property 2 doors down, so this was 6 years ago. Property 2 doors down, recently sold for $550,000 and is way trashier than that. Would you say that my property is worth at least $457,000? Okay, so the math is mathing. So Wendy, what is it worth in 30 years?
$1,192,859.
So when I'm 59 years old, because I bought that property at 29 years old, that's what that asset will be worth if I don't sell it. And it continues to appreciate at a minimum, which NAR says that's the minimum. Like there are some years, 2020, 2021, appreciations were way over 4%, right? So as I'm starting to think about my future, like financial goals, I should have at least $1 million asset when I'm 59. Now, right now, we're gonna run through this in a minute. Right now, that property cash flow is almost $2,000 a month. When it's paid off, and I no longer have the almost $3,000 mortgage, if rents didn't increase, it would be cash flowing $5,000 a month. Multiply that by 12 months, that's a $60,000 annual income. At a minimum, that's if rents didn't go up, which they should go up in the next 24 years, right? This app has dramatically changed how I have conversations with first-time home buyers and with move-up buyers. I use it all the time. It's how when people give me the objection, Bethany, I would love to move, I can't afford to. Like, awesome, let's talk about it. Why do you think you can't afford to? Well, I have this awesome interest rate and I don't want to give it up. I don't want you to give that up either, Wendy. I want you to keep that forever. Well, okay. I know, going out of script. So if I believe that property is worth $550,000 now, if I were still living in it, do you know how much I can pull on a home equity line of credit on a property you're living in? 90%, okay? So if the property is worth $550,000, 90% of that is $495,000. Now I bought the property 6 years ago for $360,000. Do you think that there's a decent amount of equity? Let's just subtract $360,000. I don't know what the mortgage balance is off the top of my head. It's $135,000 I could pull out of that property to use as my down payment on the next one. Does that make sense? Then if you run through this compound interest calculator exercise with them and you're like, okay, well, Tommy, how old's your oldest?
almost 7.
Okay, almost 7. So she might be going to college in 13 years, right? Well, what would it look like, Tommy, if you were able to keep this property and as it appreciates and as the rental income grows, you can just apply that towards her college. When you can start to make this stuff very real for their goals, they're like, okay, 2 years ago, we actually missed our unit sold goal. And we would have gotten, we would have been 3 units away if every person I convinced not to sell would have sold. But at the end of the year, I looked at it and I went, okay, but these people are going to be our clients for life. Because instead of putting our goals first, we put their goals first. Now, secret, some people will be a landlord for 1 year and decide, hell no, And you know what? You are then their phone call when they decide to offload it. You are still the hero because you tried to help them with this. They still got into their next home. We're selling one right now where they did that. They did it for a year and then they said, you know what? We decided we do not want to be landlords. No problem. You can sell it now. That's on the compound interest calculator. It's my favorite thing. And Albert Einstein says it's the seventh or eighth wonder of the world. Okay. Retirement planning. This is where some people start to get funky. So, anyone know what the life expectancy of people, I won't say men or women, they're actually different. But the life expectancy in America is actually between 74 and 78 years old. Is that crazy? That's crazy. So a lot of people, like my mom just retired this last year and she retired at the age of 65. And I think about, I believe my parents will live beyond the life expectancy, but let's just pretend that she did it. That could be 10 years that she's retired and living her life, right? Kind of depressing. But retirement planning is something we have to think about. So when you are starting to think about retirement planning, how you look at this, the 4% rule is my favorite. You take whatever you want your income to be when you are retired and you divide it by 4%. So if you say, I would be comfortable living off $100,000 a year as a retired person. If you divide that by 4%, that means you need to have $2.5 million in your investment account to retire and live off that. Super fast math. Now, what you can start to do, and this takes a lot more time, but just to know that this is an option, your retirement is going to look different depending on how you choose to set it up. So, a couple things. You could have just your traditional investments. And then you could also have your cash flowing properties. So let's go back to my duplex exercise before. And let's just do worst case scenario. So we said that it would cash flow when I'm 59, $60,000 a year, right? It should at a minimum, because by that point, rents would have gone up, so would have expenses, but rents would have gone up, right? So let's just say we're basing it off of, hey, I know I'm gonna have $60,000 coming in from that investment property. Now we have a gap of what? For me to make a total income of $100,000. 40. So here's what's cool. Now we just need to find that dollar amount. So then you would take $40,000 instead of $100,000, divide it by 4%. And now I only need to have $1 million in my retirement account. Does that make sense? All of these things play off of each other. The other piece to think about, and this is why getting debt free is so important, and also why we're dealing with the inventory issue we have right now, is because the baby boomers have paid off all their houses. So they're sitting in paid off houses and they don't want to move because why would they? They'd have expenses that they don't have right now. So the other goal is before retirement to actually get rid of all of those expenses, because then you might not need $100,000. You might only need 80 or 75. Does that make sense? So that's where this entire financial picture, and I think sometimes it becomes really overwhelming for people because they're like, oh my gosh, Bethany, so now I need to focus on paying off my debt and investing in retirement, and I should buy properties that cash flow. Like, I can't do all of that. So we're going to talk about how to diversify. But any questions on the 4% rule? Pretty straightforward. No one's depressed yet?
Houses do contract for deeds. Another passive.
Another class, Tommy. I love that. Okay, this is where, for me, it all comes together. So I stole this from my mentor, Ben Kinney, and this is how I think about investing, and my cash flow and my profit. So when you are getting started, if you're in a position like I was, where you are digging yourself out of a financial rut, the most important thing to do is actually to focus on your cash. So what this means is paying down your debt and then building your reserves. Jess, how many months of reserves do we need to have in our business bank account? 3 months of reserves. So what that means is if real estate went to crap and we didn't sell any houses as a team, I would have 3 months to turn the ship around before we were in big trouble. I do the same thing for my real estate like my investment properties. 3 months of reserves so that if I had a vacancy or I have an issue, I have that cash available. Last year, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I believe it was 11. We had 11 closings in November and like 16 closings in January. So 11 in November of 2023 and 16 in January. Guess how many we had in December? We had 1. I know that our fixed expenses as our team is $33,000 a month. Do you think 1 closing was going to cover our expenses? No. Was I stressed out about it? No. Because I knew it was coming and I had the reserves there. And I know that my break-even number is roughly 6 to 7 units per month. If our team does 6 to 7 units a month, there might not be profit there, but we're not in the red. So when you know some of those numbers and you have cash in your reserves, you don't ever get commission breath. You don't ever wake up in the middle of the night, how am I gonna pay my staff? It all works out. And I really think we are better salespeople and serve people better when we have those reserves there. Like our businesses deserve that. Secondly, once you've taken care of your reserves, investing in real estate is, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a biased realtor, but investing in real estate is one of the best ways to build your wealth. How do you build wealth when you invest in real estate? Let's talk about it. Oh boy, I'm talking to like a group of realtors. And I'm like, okay, you can use your own commission towards the down payment. I love that. What else?
You can live in it for, you know, a year or whatever, or 2 years or.
Yeah, you could live in it if it cover that necessity. Okay. Yeah, the equity compounding. What else? Cash flow. No one said that yet. Okay, what else?
Deductions.
Thank you. Tax deduction. Here's a book everyone should read called Tax-Free Wealth. I would love to hear from you if you read it, because a lot of people won't read it. It's actually really exciting, and it's about the fact that the majority of tax law is written on how for you to not pay taxes. It's the IRS's way of saying, hey, help us build. If you do these things, we will reduce your taxable income. In a minute, I'm going to show you an exercise that helped a mentor of mine make $28 million last year in income. Guess what his taxable income was?
Oh, gosh.
Oh gosh, not 100. He went from $28 million in income to $800,000 in taxable income. He owns $80 million worth of real estate with $16 million in notes against it. That's the guy that came up with this. Okay, so then we invest in real estate. After that, we also invest in the stock market. Now, I'm all about having a financial advisor. I have one myself, but you can do just as well by investing, like open a Vanguard account and invest money into the S&P 500. Next is going to be businesses. Now, here's the great part. is many of these can like coincide together. So if you treat your real estate business like a business, the IRS will give you those tax breaks. So in 2020, because I had previously cleaned up all my junk and had my bookkeeping in order, had filed my taxes, had myself on salary, had an admin on salary, when COVID hit and the PPP loan was an option, I actually didn't apply immediately because I had reserves and I thought I'm gonna let whoever really needs that use it. And then I had a mentor of mine say, Bethany, if the guy that owns Chris Ruth is raking in millions of dollars that he doesn't need, like go get your fair share. So the second time it was open, I did. I went and I pulled out the maximum that I could. It was all forgiven. Because all you had to do was reinvest it in your business. What a lot of people don't want to talk about is I believe that that PPP loan money is a huge contributor to the real estate frenzy that we saw in 2020 and 2021. Because people that are smart, business people, they're going to invest in assets that appreciate, that they get deductions on, and real estate is a really great way to do that. And then last is giving. Because I think at some point we get to a point where what are we really doing this for anymore? And it's a lot of fun to be able to give back. So if we're going to break it down, what Ben would encourage you to do is as long as you're not in a massive rut, first get out of your rut. But then if you're not in a massive rut, go back to our profit first model, and that profit income that you make, let's just pretend it's $1,000 a month. You're going to divide it up into each of these buckets. So of your, does that make sense? You would just divide it by 5. I can't do that math right now. $200, there we go. So you're going to put $200 additional in your reserves. You're going to put $200 in an account, another account, Chris, for real estate. You're going to put $200 into your stock market account. You're going to put $200 in an account to either buy a business or invest in a business or back into your business. And then $200 towards giving. Because when you're giving at that kind of level, that's a huge tax benefit as well. Questions on the 5 buckets of wealth? It almost seems a little too simple. Do you agree? No. Okay. A lot of people think,
I have a question.
yes, please.
So like, if you have like a couple, 3, 4 really good months, would you increase that profit those months, or would you just keep it at
Once
1,000?
you have, great question. Once you have 3 months of reserves built up, then I would. Absolutely. Yeah. That's where when Heather asked, like, are my percentages the same? No. Now my profit percentage is way higher.
Gotcha.
And as you scale too, like your expenses will shift. Your expenses probably don't need to be as high. I'm just doing that based on what mine had to be when I first was like on this journey. Okay, anyone know what this image is? No, okay. This is called the cash flow quadrant. Does anyone know who created it? Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah. So tax-free wealth, that guy that wrote Tax-Free Wealth is actually Robert Kiyosaki's accountant. So Robert Kiyosaki wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then his other book is Cash Flow Quadrant. Rich Dad, Poor Dad has sold way more than Cash Flow Quadrant, but what's interesting is this is actually, in my opinion, and in Robert's opinion, he says this is the book that should be the bestseller. So here's the concept to the Cash Flow Quadrant. On the left side here, you're either an employee or self-employed. So in real estate, we are self-employed, unless you're an admin on a team, okay? Then business owner, then you could be an investor. Now what happens is for a lot of people, they transition through the cash flow quadrant like this. They start as an employee, they move to self-employed, eventually become a business owner, and then maybe become an investor. I believe you can live in multiple quadrants at the same time. So does he, by the way, he wrote the book. Here's how that looks. I am self-employed. I still sell real estate. So this year I've sold 31 homes and I still make income off of that. I pay myself 50% and I pay my business 50% of the check. Okay. The business, I'm a business owner. I own a real estate team. That team makes income. expenses come out of that. What's left is profit. Investor, I own investment properties. I've been an investor in other ancillary businesses. Yeah. Most of the wealth in America on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. So what we're looking to do is, and what's kind of interesting, a lot of self-employed people become business owners, but actually never get to the point of being an investor. A lot of people that are employees become investors because they invest in the stock market, but they actually never become business owners. And so it's kind of interesting the trajectory of like the different, how they all intertwine. And this right side is where you get the most tax deductions, the most tax breaks. So even agents like in our business, my goal is by them opening their LLC, putting themselves on payroll, doing all those things, they actually become business owners, so they benefit from the tax breaks as well. Does that make sense? Cool. We're gonna run through an exercise that I'm gonna have you guys write out. So I'm gonna unplug my computer and then I'll plug it back in, but I want you to follow along by writing it out. Okay, I want you to pretend that you made $250,000 of income. This is for real estate specific people.
Income from your commissions.
Yep. It could be all your incomes. It could be like your gross commission income, and then maybe you're adding cash flow from your first rental property, but your total income, $250,000. Now your federal tax bracket at $250,000 is 35%, which equals $56,721. Anyone know, or can anyone explain how the federal tax brackets work? Do you pay 35% on your total income? No, it goes up. So it's tiered. So you're only taxed a certain amount up to a certain point. Then that tax goes higher to the next point. So it's tiered. So your effective tax rate is actually 22.69%. The highest amount is 35. But if you like took all the percentages and averaged it out, it would be 22.69. Okay. First, you're going to open what's called a solo 401k with a financial advisor. And you're going to invest $22,500 into that solo 401k. Oh, I'm sorry. 22,500. Okay. Next, you're going to open a health savings account. So you're going to invest. Now, I'm doing all of these based on being a single person. So if you're married, the number would be higher. But I'm going to open an HSA and I'm going to put $3,850 into the HSA. Next to the HSA, I want you to put in parentheses, triple tax benefit. An HSA is the best investment because it's tax-free going in. You don't pay taxes on it. Tax-free when you take it out. And it's tax-free on any growth. So a lot of people think you have to spend that money. Like my mom actually has thought that for a long time. She's like, oh, we should max out our HSA and like buy new gym equipment. I'm like, what? No, go invest it. You can actually invest it. And then it's tax-free on any of that growth. So you could invest it, and then when you're 70 years old, you could pull it out, and it would be tax-free again on any of that growth it experienced.
So that amount was to put in.
$3,850. I'm pretty sure for a married couple, you just multiply by 2. Okay, then you're gonna go buy a truck, and you're gonna pay $30,000 for a truck because it's a used truck. Still a nice truck, but it's used. You're gonna pay that in cash. All right. Who here would love to own a property in warmer weather? Me too. So you're going to spend $40,000 on purchasing a VRBO in Arizona. Your commission will go into the transaction to pay your closing costs, and the only down payment you have to pay is 10%, because on a second home loan, you only have to put 10% down. When you aren't in Arizona, you're gonna Airbnb this property. But you spent $40,000, that was your expense. Then, a couple times a year, you host parties in your backyard for your clients. And you're able to use what's called the Augusta rule.
In Minnesota?
Yep.
Okay, I thought we're still in Arizona.
Nope, we're back in Minnesota.
all right.
Primary residence.
Your primary resident, thank you. Then, if you're smart like Tommy and you've got 2 kiddos, you still have 2, right? You don't have a third one? Okay. You're gonna take pictures of them and use them in your marketing, and they're gonna stamp your postcards for you, and you're gonna pay them $13,850 per kid.
And how much for the parties?
Parties, we're gonna say is tax savings of $30,000 for the Augusta rule. Here's the coolest part. Your kids don't even have to know you're paying them. You could open a joint checking account with your child and use that $13,850 to pay for dance classes, gymnastics, hockey gear. All right.
Or open up a Roth IRA in their name.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do some math together. So we're gonna take $250,000. We are going to subtract 22,500. Then we're gonna subtract 3,850. Then we're gonna subtract $30,000. Then we're gonna subtract $40,000. Then we're gonna subtract another $30,000. And then I am gonna, in my activity, I'm saying I only have 1 kid, so 13,850. So my taxable income then goes to 109,800, except I did the math wrong, sorry. Because for the VRBO, because we did accelerated depreciation, it wasn't $40,000 we took off, it was 120. So I'm gonna subtract another 80,000. So my taxable income becomes 29,800. You wanna know what your tax would be? Less than $2,000.
Make yourself.
And utilize accelerated depreciation. Yes. So here's the cool part is a lot of people go, Bethany, I couldn't live off of $30,000. No. That's what the IRS is saying that you're living off of. The 401k, okay, you reduce that from what you can actually spend. Like that actually gets subtracted, right? If we're looking at what's the cash that's gonna be left in your account, so we're gonna reduce by the 401k. You still get it because it's in an investment, but it's just not in your checking account, right? The HSA, same thing. It's just not in your checking account. The truck, same thing. The VRBO though, you're only subtracting 40. And then the Augusta rule, you're actually not subtracting from your cash. It's just how the IRS is subtracting it. And then what I think is cool, I love the idea of putting it in a Roth, but here's the reality is a lot of parents have big expenses with their kids anyway. So they're spending the money on hockey gear or dance classes or whatever. So at least reduce your taxable income by that amount and still spend that same money. Does that make sense? And I'll share these slides with Candy and she can you guys. If you want them.
So do you have, you said you have all your agents up as an LLC, so then you're prepping them to basically do this. with whatever they make, even if it's not one of the two.
We'll find the house.
Accelerated depreciation and like that's probably gonna impact it. I know that's totally separate.
Yeah, they are very separate. I actually don't know how it impacts the 1031. I don't know if you, do you know the answer to that? Yeah, I think so, because I don't think you could do it twice on the same money. So yeah, I don't think you could do it in a 1031. But I don't know that for sure.
What is it like? You should know on it, VRBO. Take it up front and then you can hold for a really long time.
Well, there's two ways to do it. There is, oh my gosh, what's it called where they send someone out and they, hold on. You actually have to have someone that goes out and says what you can accelerate the depreciation by, usually over a 4-year time period. My accountant handles all that for me, so I unfortunately don't remember exactly how it does that.
Or step 7 or 8.
And the vehicle, it just has to be able to pull 6 tons.
Oh, it has to be a truck.
Oh, it's more,
No.
no,
It could be an SUV.
I thought it was on weight.
that's a weight. And
Yeah, it's a weight and pull.
Tesla X qualified.
Oh, I really want one of those.
It's really heavy.
And it's why I drive a pickup truck. You wouldn't have to drive a pickup truck, but you just have to make sure it fits the parameters. I know that like Volvo only has one SUV that qualifies. Because all my realtor friends drive one. Okay. With the time we have left, I have 2 things I still want to share because there were lots of questions on investing and I do want to get to a couple of those. This is something that I use in coaching, and quite frankly, in like coaching myself all the time. Diana Kokoska, who is the original creator of Bold, she taught this in a class called Coaching Skills Camp. And I actually use these questions in this pyramid when I'm consulting clients as well. And so how she looks at it is, why is the most common basic question most people use? Think about it. If you have a toddler, or if you're around a toddler, they love to say, why? 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 What happens though is when we use the question why, we're actually giving someone permission to go negative. Why'd that happen? Well, I got stuck in traffic. Lack of accountability. It's not a great way to start a question. The next way, so if we're looking at this in the sense of money, I have a lot of people that I'll talk to that are like, well, why do I have to be the person that didn't sell as many houses this year? Or why didn't I find that same success? Or why did I not get a return on Bitcoin and someone else did, right? The next question is how? Well, how did they do it? I want to be like that person. How did they get there? Usually like step by step, you're at least moving forward. The question what is even more specific. How did they get there? But then the question of what did they do to get there? So my hope is some of the things that we went through today gave you the what's on like what you could do next to get there. But the most powerful pointed question to ask yourself is, who do I need to be to make that happen? So for me, it was I had to get really disciplined. I had to know enough about myself and how I treated money to create my secret savings account, to read these books, to start teaching it, honestly, way before I was qualified to teach it. And even now I don't feel qualified. Like the reason I teach it is because I learn every time I teach. So I want to encourage you that no matter where you are on this journey, ask yourself, like, not just how or what people did, but who do you need to be? And then who do you need to surround yourself with to get there? I believe we should all have a board of directors, like most big companies do. Your board of directors should include a financial advisor, a loan officer that you trust, an accountant, and someone that has done what you want to do.
Can you say this?
Absolutely. A financial advisor, an accountant, a loan officer, and someone who's where you want to be, what you're striving to be at. Reason this is important is as you grow, one, you need to have people that inspire you around you. So that person that you want to be like, to learn from their failures more than you learn from their wins. Secondly, is if you want to build a portfolio in real estate, you need to have a loan officer because sometimes, like the exercise we did where you make $250,000, but your taxable income only shows $30,000, the loan officer is not going to be able to approve you for much of a loan on your next investment property. So the loan officer and the tax advisor in my world, they communicate because they all know my 5-year plan. So it's like, how does this fit in? Yes, we want to reduce my taxable income, but we don't want to reduce it so much that I can't go invest in other real estate. As soon as 2 years ago, Ben was rejected, Ben Kinney, who I just shared all of his financial stats, was rejected from getting a commercial loan because he had reduced his taxable income by too much. They don't care that he has $60-something million worth of real estate that's all paid off to use as leverage. They still were like, nope, we have to look at this and this, and couldn't buy the commercial building he wanted to buy. Which is kind of wild to me, right? It all goes hand in hand. So that's why you want all of those people. And I literally copy them all on emails at least once to twice a year about like my goals of where I'm at. And I'd also add to that a business coach. So for many of you, that's pay me, which is amazing. So come up with what's your annual goal next year. Not just how much you want to make, but what do you want to do with it? The other thing I learned is if we don't know what we're going to do with the money, we'll actually never make it. Our brain needs to have a plan. Otherwise, what happens is, let's say Tommy said to me, Bethany, my goal is to make $200,000 next year. I said, awesome. What if you only made $175,000? And he goes, well, I guess that'd be okay. Okay. Well, what if you only made $150,000? Well, that'd be stretching it, but you know, I got kids in daycare, but I guess it'd be okay. Well, what if you made 125? Hell no. Okay, well, guess what? Tommy's financial thermostat is 150,000. He has to get to a point, and by the way, this does not mean he should go get a bunch of debt. Like I know realtors that say, well, I bought the house because it would force me to sell more houses to pay for it. Yikes. I know people like that. There are people in this office like that. Like, oh, I bought that because I wanted the pressure of having to go sell more real estate. That is not how I want to live. Right? Okay, I know we're almost out of time, but I want to run through because there were questions on house hacking. So I'm just going to run you through my house hacking really quick. So the first property I bought was in Hopkins. It's a side-by-side duplex. The asking price for this property was $360,000. Now, at this point in time, I still had a ton of real estate, or not real estate debt, tax debt. So I only qualified for an FHA loan. How much do we need to put down on an FHA loan? 3.5%. Okay. How much can you ask for from a seller and seller paid closing costs if you're using an FHA loan? Maximum of 6%. And then I was also getting paid my commission. They were offering a 2.5% payout. Okay. What I did is I went to the listing agent and I bumped up the sales price to $385. I bumped up my commission to 3%. And, I asked for 3% in seller paid closing costs. I used FHA. And when you do all this math, I put $4,000 of earnest money into the transaction, and I walked away from closing getting a check back. So I put less than $4,000 of my own money into purchasing this duplex for $385,000. I very, very quickly renovated the other side of the duplex and got a tenant in there for $1,650 a month. This is on the 409 side. And then I lived on the 411 side, and I rented out a room to a gal for $650. So that's what I was affiliated in monthly rent. My monthly mortgage on this property at that time was $2,400 and some change. So I lived there for less than $200 a month. Then when rates dropped, so what does happen is your taxes go up every year, right? So your payment, my payment had started to creep up. Then interest rates dropped and I refinanced. I was able to do what's called an FHA streamline. So we refinanced, and now the payment on that property, because taxes have gone up significantly. So this was then. Now the payment is $2,950. I rent unit 409 for $2,000 a month, which is under market value. I could be getting more. They moved in 4 years ago. But then I Airbnb the other side, and it roughly brings in $3,200 a month. I was getting antsy in fall of 2020, and I moved back in with my parents, and I rented out the unit I was living in to get ready to buy the next property. I didn't know where it was. Hadn't identified it, but I got pre-approved for a 5% down conventional loan that you can use on multifamily as long as you own or occupy. And that program still exists. So I turned this into this, and this started cash flowing, roughly, the expenses like paying for garbage and stuff for the Airbnb brings it under $2,000, but it's around $2,000 a month. The property I live in today, I bought in 2021 they were advertising, and this is really what I hope everyone gets out of this, is their asking price was $425. I paid them $436. I did a conventional 5% down loan. I still bumped my commission to 3%, and I still asked for seller paid closing costs because you can ask for up to 3%. And my total cash out of pocket was the 2%. So still less than, it was like $8,000 on this one. The one I live in today, I bought it in 2021 for $436. I just had an appraisal done because I put some money into it. The appraisal came back at $590, which then created enough equity that I was able to get rid of my mortgage insurance. Because when you buy for 5% down, you're paying mortgage insurance until you get to 80%. Well, by doing the appraisal, now mind you, I did not have to do a refi. That property is at 3.6%. I don't want to refi it, but you can get a new appraisal done, and then they can drop the PMI. So that monthly payment is weirdly enough almost the same as my Hopkins one, like 29 and some change now. I rent the other side for $2,300. I rent my basement to the business because we have all of our staging in there for $400. So I live in my side of my duplex for $250 a month. The cool part about learning house hacking, and I know we've gone over, so maybe this is a deeper conversation for another day, is that when you start to do it, like Chris, that's what I would be focused on is house hacking right now. When you start to do it, people pay attention and then they want to do it too, especially your first time home buyers. So, well, thanks for hanging out with me today. I apologize that we went over, and then I'll send the slides to Candy as well so she can have those.
Thank you.